Hi everyone, welcome. This is National Master Dentist Monokroussos, and today we're going to take a look at, if not my best game ever, certainly my craziest and probably most memorable game ever. And this was played in the 1999 U.S. Amateur Team Championship in Parsippany, New Jersey, and I was playing for a very strong team. So I was board 1, and the reason why I'm saying it's a very strong team isn't because I was on board 1, but because our average team rating was 2199, or pretty close to that, and that's the maximum. So the team rating has to be under 2200, and we were just barely. So this was, I think, from round 2, and so of course we needed to win this match. We were pretty heavy favorites. My opponent in this game was Lou Barcarola, who's a good player from, I think, New Jersey, and I believe at one point he was a master. At the time of this game he was rated 2170, so certainly a good player, but because, again, our team is rated 2199, certainly, we'd expected to win the match. I mean, if their best player is lower than our team average, we should be in great shape. But as it turned out, excluding my game, we were only leading 2-1 by the time my game was the last one to finish. So this game was, in fact, very important. And I have to say that the way I played, certainly the opening of this game, was not really taking one for the team there. So, I would say normally I've been a very good team player over the years, but on this occasion I let aesthetic considerations get the best of me. At any rate, we'll have a look now, and I think you'll be completely fascinated by this game. I certainly hope you will be fascinated and entertained. It'll probably take us 2 shows to get through this. So anyway, let's get underway. All right, so I had white. Barcarola's black. I played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And now knight c3, and this is a move that I'm proud to say I've only played, I think, this one time. No, that's probably not true, because I think I would experiment with this silly thing sometimes in blitz games with this ridiculous line with knight takes e5. Never played this in a tournament, but in blitz I used to try it every now and again. Not anymore. At any rate, knight c3 is, generally speaking, a fairly spineless move. But the reason why I played this is that a grandmaster acquaintance of mine suggested the 4 knights, the Scotch 4 knights, as something that I might find interesting to trot out. Now, actually, I faced the Scotch 4 knights on quite a few occasions with black, and I'm very happy to have that side of the board. But I gave it a try. Or I tried to give it a try. It didn't, in fact, occur. Now, it's important to point out that you can't guarantee the Scotch 4 knights by playing the usual Scotch move order. So e takes d4, knight takes d4, and now if black plays knight f6, well, then you get it with knight to c3. So the main line of the Scotch here is knight takes c6, and you play e5, and you get this. And this is very complicated. Black can play either bishop to a6, or he can play knight to b6. They're both playable. White has chances for an edge in both cases, but it's just a lot of theory. Nothing wrong with theory, just that's what you're going to get into if you go down this road with either color. All right, so back on this position after knight to f6, knight c3 gets you to the Scotch 4 knights. The usual continuation is bishop to b4. The problem, though, with this move order, the normal Scotch move order, is that after d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4, black can play bishop to c5. And there goes your 4 knight Scotch. Again, this is perfectly playable for both sides. There's lots of theory. Right now, this is in fact the main move through the normal Scotch move order. Anyway, if you want the Scotch 4 knights, the only way to more or less guarantee it is with knight c3. Though, as we'll see in this game, it didn't happen. Anyway, the Scotch 4 knights continues like this. So knight f6, which is the main move, and I would have to say the best move here. All right, now d4. Not knight takes e5. E takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop to b4 is the best move. Knight c6, bc, bishop d3, d5. Swap the pawns off, both sides castle. White plays bishop to g5, threatening to take on f6 and then take on d5. So black plays c6. And here white has 3 moves. Well, I'll just go through them very briefly without really elaborating. So knight e2, the idea here is to transfer the knight either to g3 or to d4, and it's fairly flexible. You're waiting to see what what black does before committing anything else. The second move is queen to f3, and here black can either play bishop to e7, kind of trying to react to the pin and not allow the doubling of pawns, but in fact the best move here, in my opinion, is not to go back there, but to simply play bishop to d6. And if white wants to double the pawns, it's completely fine. The f6 pawn is very difficult for white to get at it, and I find that the open B and E files, the bishop pair, and the strong hanging pawns in the center are quite good for black, and I have a very nice record with black in this position against even titled players. Alright, finally the third move, which became briefly popular in the mid to late 90s, was knight to a4, and this was popularized by the French grandmaster Joel Lautier. And the idea is, instead of going for this kingside play with queen f3 or the knight going to e2 or both, the queen goes to f3, knight e2, knight g3, knight f5, or knight h5, depending on what black's done. Instead of all that business, in this line, white tries to play on the queen side against black's pawns here with the move c4. So it's kind of a minority attack of a sort. So the c pawn against the c and d pawns, trying to create some kind of concession in black's pawn structure there. Again, black is really completely fine here. In fact, black, I think, has a plus score with the main moves in this position, h6 and bishop to d6. So there's really not much for black to worry about, but it was an interesting plan, and certainly one that you should know if you play this position with black. Alright, anyway, that's what I was headed for back then, but my opponent surprised me with the move d6. And so much for my brilliant theoretical preparation. So I was already out of specific prep. Now, it doesn't mean that I had no idea of what to do here. I've played e4 and played e5 against e4 off and on for pretty much my entire chess playing career, which is well over 20 years as of this game, and now it's about 30 years. So again, I had a good feel for what was going on and some reasonable ideas about this position. And here there are three moves that white can try. One move, which actually isn't too bad, is bishop to c4. Now, playing the Italian game with your knight already on c3, so with this guy here, is generally a bit insipid. But with black having already played the pawn to d6, I'd say both sides have both gained and lost out of this exchange of slightly unusual moves. So, first of all, black has to be accurate here. If he plays knight to f6, this is just bad because of knight to g5, and white's getting a favorable version of the Fegatello, the fried liver attack. A second move that black can play is bishop to g4, and here white gets the chance for the famous Legal's mate. So this is something that I would say certainly all beginners try, and I know I've managed to achieve it in games with weaker players. I hope I never fell for it, but it's possible that I've fallen for it too. In any case, the way it would get set up here is with h3, and if black were to play bishop to h5, knight takes e5, bishop takes queen, bishop f7, king up, and then knight to d5 mate. So that's the basic Legal's mate. But it turns out that even if black is a little bit more accurate than that, bad things can still happen to him. So for example here, obviously if d takes e5, white's happy, queen takes h5, and he's up a pawn. Or if black plays knight takes e5, this might look like the refutation at first glance. White has queen h5, and then queen to b5 check, forking the king and the knight, regaining the piece, again with an extra pawn, so it should be a winning position. Okay, so that's what happens on bishop to h5. Black can simply play bishop to e6, but here white should have a small edge after swapping and then playing d4. So something like this should be a little bit better for white. Okay, and then finally, after h3, if bishop takes f3, queen f3, white probably has a very tiny advantage here, thanks to the bishop pair. Now, it's not very much, and I would say that in fact, if black's bishop could come outside of the pawn structure, it'd probably be pretty much equal, but maybe white has a very, very small pull here. Alright, so the point is I don't think bishop to g4 is really the best solution. And knight f6, as we already saw, is bad because of knight to g5. But bishop to e7, I think, is a good way for white to play. And here I don't think white has very much. So d4, ed, knight d4, knight f6, castles. And actually here we're in a variation of the Philidor defense that's playable for both sides. So white maybe has I'm not sure if white has an edge. Probably has a very, very small edge, but it's completely playable for black. I've played the black side of this in blitz games and felt quite comfortable. So in any case, more theory here. Alright, so that's one way to play after d6 with bishop to c4. The second way to go is with the move bishop to b5, so trying to transpose back into a Ruy Lopez. Here, maybe black can play bishop to g4, and the position will have a somewhat independent character. Alright. You can also play a6, and then white has the option of either swapping on c6, playing d4. And this position is, again, roughly equal. We're playing bishop to a4. Alright, again, with the knight on c3, probably black is doing well here. So I chose a third option. I played the move d4. And if black plays e takes d4, this would lead us to a Steinitz defense, and white should have a slight advantage here. I think pretty much any source will confirm it, whether you're looking in a theoretical manual or taking a look at the database and just seeing what the percentages are. I think it's safe to say that white has a safe, solid, slight advantage here. Alright, well my opponent chose something different. He played bishop to g4. And now for sure I was out of anything that I could respectably call my book. So here I considered three moves. I thought about playing bishop to b5. And on bishop to b5 I thought, well, okay, if e takes d4, I'm not really sure how much I like this. So queen takes d4, it's just kind of murky. So this is sort of a weird position. Or even if he takes, I mean, I didn't really want to take with the pawn here. I mean, it's playable, but I didn't really want to do it. If queen takes f3, ed, knight e2. So positions like this are pretty, I don't know, they're playable for both sides. I mean, I guess I probably like white slightly better here, but black's going to have a very natural position. His knight's going to either end up on f6 if I trade queens, or on e7. So that covers the d5 square, and this bishop on g7 is really good. So it just cuts across the board. It's going to complement the rook when it gets to b8, and so I think black has a playable position here. So this is fine for both sides. I mean, I don't think it's anything to rush into or to regret. All right. The second possibility is d takes e5 after bishop to g4. So d takes e5. And now if black plays knight takes e5, I think bishop to e2 gives white an edge. White keeps this small center, or the advantage that black only has the small center here. So this pawn on e4 versus the pawn on d6 is generally a little bit nicer for white. It's got a little bit more space, has pretty nice control over the d5 square, or at least exerts some pressure on that square. And black has to be a little bit careful about playing a move like c6. So if we're talking about this, let me get rid of these guys. So if we're talking about this square, if black plays c6, then he has to worry about d6 maybe becoming a little bit weak, especially given that it's on an open file. So I would like this position, and if black was going to play knight takes e5, I definitely would have gone for this. But I thought after d takes e5, I really wouldn't have very much. I could play bishop to b5, but the threat to double pawns really isn't all that serious, because it's going to be very difficult for me to actually put meaningful pressure on them. I mean, I could put my queen on c4 maybe, but black can play queen to d7 or bishop to d7 or knight to e7, and I really can't augment my pressure after that. And then I've given up the bishop pair, so I don't think I really get very much. Again, it's playable, but nothing really special. So after bishop to g4, I chose the move d5. And I kind of hated myself at this point. Not because I think my position's bad, but just, you know, I generally like playing e4 for open games. I mean, they're called open games for a reason. and I kind of prefer them. And so this was really turning into some kind of boring slog kind of a position. I have nothing against boring slog positions. In fact, there are cases where I play them. Heck, I played the Berlin in the game I showed you last week. But this really wasn't what I had intended for this game, so it was kind of annoying to me to play the an E4 opening like a very old man. So, as I said, I was sort of annoyed by the way this had gone, but you take what you got. All right, so my opponent played knight to D4. Maybe knight to E7 is playable too, but anyway, he chose this. And now, initially, my plan had been to play bishop to E3, and then something like this would probably be the continuation. So knight F3, G3, bishop D7, F4, knight F6, rook to G1, and this is actually kind of an interesting position. I mean, so there's some King's Indian motifs here, but there's enough that's certainly different to make it distinctive. Now, white's not going to be in a real hurry to take on E5, because if I take on E5, then this black bishop is going to be really strong. I mean, it'll come to B4, maybe C5, in some cases, obviously not here. And I think black will have pretty good counterplay. But I just want to build up, try to control as many squares on my side of the board as I can before taking some sort of decisive action. So probably black will end up having to take on F4 and then play G6. I mean, I think that would be the most likely continuation here, or some kind of waiting move, but it's probably going to come to that. Anyway, I was thinking here in this position after knight to D4, and maybe I was inspired by the thought of Legal's mate earlier, and I started thinking about knight takes D4. It certainly looks like an insane move. Now, if black were to take my knight, well, this would be great. Queen takes G4, D takes C3, bishop to B5 check. So I'm just winning outright here. I'm going to be up at least a pawn. He can't castle. This would be wonderful. So he can't really duck the challenge of capturing the queen. But, of course, this takes some pretty serious evaluation. So I would suggest to those of you who are watching this, and who else am I going to suggest it to? I mean, if you're not watching this, the suggestion would be kind of moot. So to those of you who are watching this, I would suggest stopping the video at this point and try to work out as best as you can whether bishop takes D1 is just complete nonsense, absolute rubbish, or whether it might actually in fact be playable. So stop the video, see what you can come up with, have fun, and when you're ready, come back. Okay, so this is in fact what I did. I played knight takes D4. Now, I didn't entirely believe in it, and I was certainly aware, I remembered here that I was playing for a team, and given that I was playing someone well less than 200 points below my rating, or well over 200 points below my rating, that this was perhaps not the wisest move. But I also decided that I really couldn't forgive myself if I passed up the chance to make a move like this in a tournament game. So this was, again, a poor team decision, and I apologize to my teammates afterward. But I think I received so much pleasure from this game, and many of the people that I've shown this to have as well, including title players. In fact, I remember Jacob Agard. Actually, it's not how you pronounce his name, but that's probably how you'll recognize it. He's written many very excellent books, both on openings and also on just improving your play. So he has this whole Excelling at Chess series. It's really outstanding. So anyway, he told me about this game. So he said it was one of his favorites, and he also called it completely stupid. But in a kind of joking way. Not that I'm an idiot, but just that it was just a completely absurd game. So that was kind of nice when he said that. And some other title players have really enjoyed this too. So I've shown this to Serper, Grandmaster Gregory Serper, Saudin Robovic, who's an IM, lives in New York nowadays. Really enjoyed this. He actually saw the game as it was happening. So they all enjoyed it, and a lot of other people did too, and I think you will as well. Okay, so anyway, I played this. Bishop takes D1 happened. He had no choice. He thought for a long time about this, and I have to say that I think that was a big mistake on his part. Not taking it wasn't a mistake, but it's very easy to reject the alternatives. So I think Bishop takes D1 is a move you should play pretty quickly, and then you just kind of hang on for the ride and you see where it takes you. I mean, you make sure you don't lose immediately, but after you've done that, you should just get on with it. And in fact, he ended up in really serious time trouble later on in the game, and a lot of it was because of, I think, poor time management on moves like this. If it's your only move, you play it, you solve the problems later. Both for the sake of time management, also because it means that you have to work less, because maybe I'm going to do something different. So he shouldn't have to worry about calculating everything up front. Let me do the calculation where there are options. I mean, he's got no option here. And third, it's just easier to visualize. I mean, why look 15 moves ahead if you only have to look 10 moves ahead or 7 moves ahead? So when you're in that kind of situation, make the forced move pretty much right away. Convince yourself that it's forced, and then just do it. All right, so bishop to b5 check, and now here he has no way to bail out. So if he plays queen to d7, it's just very simple counting. Material's even, but his d4 pawn is a goner. So I'll be a pawn up, and I should just be winning there. Okay. Or if he plays c6, d takes c6, and now the problem is he's got no way to avoid c7 check that doesn't allow something worse, like c takes b7 check. So if the queen leaves, if the queen comes up someplace like, I don't know, h4, let's say, or yeah, okay, h4, or no, a5. a5 makes more sense, but none of them make sense ultimately because c takes b7, and then I make a queen. So that's completely hopeless. And if a6, oops, if a6, c takes b7, and when we count all the dead bodies at the end of the day, white is up a pawn here, and black has a terrible pawn structure, so again, white's simply winning. Finally, after d takes c6, if b takes hello, I'll get it, there we go. B takes c6, bishop c6, black either has to play queen to d7, when, again, we just count everything up, and again, white's up a pawn, and probably going to win a second pawn. So knight e2 or knight to b5 probably come to the same thing. So that's completely winning. And if instead, after bishop takes c6, black plays king to e7, well, hey, there's Legal's mate once again, knight to d5. So very, very fun, very pretty, but not forced. So black can play king to e7, and here, doggone it, I can't put my knight on d5. So I've got to play knight to f5, which of course is what I intended, king f6, and now h4. Okay, so this is a position that I reached quickly from my standpoint once I decided to play knight takes d4, and my opponent should have reached quickly, but didn't. Now here, I had been under the impression that h6 was more or less forced, and that's in fact what he played, but he missed a nice move, so he could have played king to g6. And I think this was a double hallucination on maybe both of our parts. So the first thing to notice is that, okay, if h5 check, black could even play king to f6, because now I don't have bishop to g5 check anymore. Of course, he has even better, he can just play bishop takes h5. Alright, so after king to g6, here I would just play knight takes d1, and certainly I have some compensation, but the point is that now he plays h6, and his king can tuck in here on h7. So I would only have two pieces for the queen. Certainly I've got a space advantage. I've got, what I do have, the pieces that I do have are going to be pretty well placed. But, hey, it's only two pieces for a queen. So it's not sufficient compensation. Certainly it would be a big fight still. I mean, again, it would take him quite some time to unravel everything, but black is certainly preferable here. All right, instead he played the move h6 right away, and this is what I had calculated and hoped to see, because now I still have this nice trick with bishop to g5. All right, of course, if the queen moves, I take it. If the king moves, I take the queen, so he's got to take. And now I win the rook on h8. All right, so this was basically my analysis. And I thought, all right, his king is way out in the center of the board. I don't have quite enough material, but with his king so far out there, I'm ahead in development. I should have certainly practical compensation here that should be adequate. Whether it's in fact sufficient, okay, maybe not if I'm playing a computer, but for a real-world game, yeah, I do, and besides, it'll be a lot of fun. So what the heck? Again, not recommended policy for a team match, but yeah, I think it's good to play this way every once in a while. You know, you live a little bit. You remember that the game is about fun, and you know, not about trophies or small cash prizes or any of that stuff. So we play the game because we love the game for its beauty. And if you enjoy tactical positions and unclear games, why not play this way every so often? If you lose, so what? You lose a game. It's a game. So I'm quite happy with having made this decision. All right, back to the game and evaluating what the heck is going on here. Now, I thought he would take the pawn on g5, and then something like this is an approximation of what would probably happen. So rook takes, bishop retreats, take this one, takes this, and here all kinds of things are possible. So the bishop's going to come to d3, probably. The knight comes to e4. I probably want to castle to get the second rook into the game. Maybe play rook to h8 to keep his queen off of h4 as well. So that's another possibility. And also just to bring it back, there may be some cases where I want to retreat the rook to h5 to join in the attack. So there's no mate, certainly. But again, black is quite tied down, and it's going to take him some time unraveling everything. So again, I think that practically speaking, white has good chances. And something like this could be the continuation. So rook to h8, a6. Bishop to e2 is kind of interesting because after bishop to d3, the problem with this is that now my bishop and knight are going to kind of trip over each other. So after a move like king f6, if I play knight to e4, plays king to e7, I'd like to be able to put the bishop on f5 maybe, or at least on this diagonal. Not necessarily on f5, but to have it somewhere here. But I can't, because the stupid knight's in the way. So that's the idea behind bishop to e2. It gives me the option of maybe putting it on that diagonal. All right, so king f6, maybe castles long, king e7, and now g4 is possible to stop f5, or maybe I can play f4, trying to blast open some lines here. All right, whatever. I mean, there's so many possibilities here. There's no real way to analyze this exhaustively. But it's just interesting. I mean, it's a great position to try to analyze. And again, I hope all of you will take a look at this game and see what you can come up with. All right, so in the game, after h takes g6, though, my opponent played king takes g6. Or, sorry, not takes, but king to g6. And we'll see his idea momentarily. All right, so I played rook h8. You drop the bishop back. And here maybe I should play f3. Not sure. So takes, king f5, rook g8, king takes g5. Again, rook h8 for familiar reasons. a6, knight e4. And now there's no bishop to e2. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So bishop to d3, f5, knight g3, queen g5, knight takes f5, king f7, and who knows what's going on here. So probably king f1 is sensible. Clearing e1 for my rook, so I can try to zigzag this guy into play, maybe something like this. And who knows? Who knows what's going on here? It's just a funny position. He's tied down, so this is part of my compensation here. This bishop can't move. Can't play g6, because if he does, then I have knight h4, and that pawn's going to be a goner. So it's really a murky position. All right, so in the game I played rook takes g8, and I'm not sure about this. I mean, it gives up a little bit of material, maybe, but at the same time, well, I'm not even sure it gives up material. See, in the line where I play f3, I don't end up losing the exchange. I mean, I get the knight on g8 for free, quote unquote, but I'm losing both my f and g pawns. So here, after rook takes g8, now I have to give up the exchange, but I'm keeping my pawns. So it's really not clear how to evaluate this. Okay, so this is what happened. Now I played f3. takes, queen e7, knight e4. Alright, so all of that was kind of forced after I played rook takes g8. And now we've got another position where black at least has a fundamental choice of moves. In the game he played a6. I'm not sure that's best. Probably it's better for him to have played rook to h8 straight away. And then the king goes to g8. And now his rook is ready to rumble. And I can shut it out of the game, but still, I mean, I have to at least devote some of my resources to keeping it out of the game. All right, so he played a6, and now here maybe I could play. Well, again, now I've got a choice. So I played bishop to d3, but it's also interesting to play f6. And I'll just show a couple of variations. Really, I think I'll really just stick to one that's kind of interesting. So it's not best play, but I think the best move here is g takes f6. But queen f8, I found some interesting lines. Okay, so bishop to d3. Again, here maybe g takes f6 is best, but let's say black plays g6. Well, here this will kind of show some of the interesting possibilities that are in the position. So king e2, maybe castling is better. c6, rook h1, king to g8. And now it might seem as if white is just out of gas here. So there's no, I don't have any more major pieces to stack on the h file. My bishop on d3 is pretty well locked up. And if I can't find anything to do, black is going to take on d5. And even if I play something like, let's say, c4, okay, so then c takes d5, c takes d5, rook c8. And now it looks as if I'm just in trouble. I mean, black's going to play maybe queen d8, and then swing the queen out to b6 or to a5. And the counterattack is going to be really kind of painful. But in fact, it's quite unclear still here. So I can play the move knight to f2. And all of a sudden it transpires that white still has some threats. The idea is to play knight to g4 and then knight to h6. So black is going to need to clear f8 for his king, and he wants to do that anyway. He wants to get the queen into the game. So queen d8, knight g4, say queen to b6, knight h6 check, king f8. Now here I don't really want to allow queen takes b2, so take time out with b3. Now let's say black plays queen to a5, hoping to start wreaking havoc here. Well, now all of a sudden white gets some serious counterplay with knight to f5. And I'm threatening rook h8 mate. And if black plays king to g8, that's just a terrible blunder, of course, because I have knight e7 and then rook h8 mate. So after knight to f5, black should first take the pawn, and now bring the king over. And this is just a very weird and wacky position. So I play here, he takes this, I take that, and again, who knows what's going on here. I mean, this is just still an irrational position. So I've got a passed d pawn, a passed f pawn, but his queen is active, my g pawn is going to fall. Who knows? And this is actually somewhat like what will happen later on in the game. So I'll end up with active pieces, his queen starts getting active, and I get passed pawns, and it just becomes a race. Okay, so that's what happens back here if I play c4. I can also maybe play the immediate knight to f2, and this leads to various adventures as well. For example, e4. So e4 seems to be best. So if he doesn't do this, then my pieces just start running all over the landscape, and he's in big trouble. So e4, now maybe knight to g4, just crazy chess. So he plays queen to b8, trying to give room for his king and to get his queen in via a7. So I check. Again, knight f5, king e8, check, takes, knight h6. And although black is up in exchange here, I think, how much? For one pawn, which he can't regain it immediately, but could play rook f8. But the crazy thing about this is that after rook f8 or king e8, whatever, it's still very unclear, because I can play like f4, g4, f5, and I'm breaking through here, so I'm going to get more passed pawns. So let's say black is careless here. So, oops, sorry. Yeah, I can do that. So takes, B takes. Let's say I play F4. I don't know. King E6, G4. All right, I'll make a kind of a cooperative variation here. So let's say this, and now this. Okay, black has to actually be careful here, because after something like C5, I have knight F7, and I'm just winning here. So I've got 4 passed pawns. Now, granted, the G4 pawn isn't very useful, but the rest of them are. So I should just be winning in this position. So black, you know, it's very, very murky, very irrational. All right, so instead of F6 though, when again none of that was forced. I mean, this final position, I'm winning, but certainly wasn't required. But anyway, F6 was interesting. I played bishop to D3 instead. All right, now black got on the right track with rook to H8. I played king to F2. Again, F6 was possible. And now black played F6. Okay, you could have played king to G8. Here I played G6, which I think is best. King G8, G4, C6. All right, and now here I played bishop to C4. Okay, I think this is best too. Trying to get this piece into play. And here my opponent played B5. And here again, there are a couple of interesting possibilities. So I played bishop to B3, but it's not the only move. It's not the only move here. So what I'll do is I think I'll stop here, and we'll make this our branching off point for the week. And so let me encourage you guys to analyze the move D takes C6 check. All right, so have fun with this. See what you can come up with. I mean, I think this is just a really remarkable position, and I'm honestly not sure what's going on here. So have fun with this. The game is just going to get crazier and crazier, and then the ending is wonderful in its own way too. So enjoy this. Don't look it up in the database. You can find it there if you try, but I think you'll be happier if you just work on the game and wait for the story to unfold. So thanks a lot. Sorry to keep you all in suspense, but I hope you've enjoyed what we've seen so far.